$15 million, $13 million guaranteed. Raiders also signed running back Doug Martin and released Michael Crabtree to make room for all the new additions. Coach, how good are the Raiders now with this new look offense?
Yeah, I don't really see it as being that big of a new look offense. So they swap out wide receivers, and Michael Crabtree had been very productive for him. And I
Not last year.
Well, in general though, and Jordy Nelson, I've liked him over time. Doug Martin, he's averaged 2.9 yards a carry the last 2 years. I like Derek Carrier, who they signed. He's a tight end I coached in San Francisco, who I think has great upside. That's probably the guy I'm most excited about. To me, this isn't about these additions. It really goes back to how Derek Carr relates to Gruden and to that system. And even last year, when you looked at how they approached the game, they wanted to be run first, pass second, and that's not how they were successful the year before. And with Derek Carr, he comes off of his injury last year. He comes off of high expectations from the season before, and then he's got the new contract, and he had to deal with all those things. And he didn't handle it as well as I hoped he would.
When Doc Rivers took over the LA Clippers front office, he started all of a sudden signing guys that had played really well in games against the Celtics from when he was their coach. It's like, hey, Big Baby Davis, come on down. Like, there were a bunch of guys who were good a few years ago when he had seen them with the Celtics. I need to deep dive into the game log of Jordy Nelson and Doug Martin on Monday Night Football. See if Doug Martin had one of his star turns, because I believe he did on Monday Night Football when John Gruden was there as a broadcaster. Because I don't see it in Doug Martin. And Jordy Nelson is you are believing that 2 years removed from an ACL, he is going to recapture something that I did not see from him last season. So what is my analysis of the Raiders? It's the same as yours. How do you think Derek Carr is, pardon me? How good is he? Like, do you think he's the guy who was a fringe, lower-tier MVP candidate before he broke his leg 2 years ago? Or do you think he's the guy who he looked like last year, which was a middle-of-the-pack quarterback? Because if he's the latter rather than the former, then the Raiders are a middle-of-the-pack football team. They don't have, aside from Khalil Mack, some great defense. They don't have a running game I love. They have an excellent offensive line. They have a potential star receiver in Amari Cooper, and a quarterback that we'll see on.
And a coach who hasn't coached in years.
Right.
This is the thing. The game has not changed that much as far as the X's and O's. There are some things practice-wise and other things he has to make. There are tremendous adjustments, too. But as far as the X's and O's and what guys can do, well, I saw when they signed these two players a little bit different than what Coach and what Nick saw. I saw them adding some speed to the lineup. All right? Jordy Nelson is a better and a faster receiver than Michael Crabtree. So he's a better match with Amari Cooper. So you actually get Amari Cooper better in getting Jordy Nelson. I believe that Jordy Nelson, he will be focused. He is a very good route runner, but he's also a good deep threat. What does Carr do well? He throws the ball deep. So now instead of having one deep threat in Amari Cooper, now they have two. I believe in Doug Martin. Tampa Bay had one of the worst offensive lines in the league. Oakland, 2 or 3 years ago, they had one of the best offensive lines. I believe that Gruden is going to utilize Doug Martin, not between the tackles, but try to get him on the perimeter of the defense and get him the ball out of the backfield. So what is that? That means more speed. To me, they added more speed to their lineup compared to trying to be in a big, powerful, I'm just going to knock you off the ball. So for me, I see them adding variety to what they've done before. I see them getting their second offensive player, Amari Cooper, making him better because Jordy Nelson, I believe that John Gruden and his experience with Keyshawn Johnson, John Gruden does not like diva wide receivers. Amari Cooper, quiet as a church mouse. Jordy Nelson, quiet as a church mouse. So those two things, I know John Gruden is in love with. Compared to what they did on Monday night, I don't know. I know they added speed to the lineup. They got their second offensive player. They made him better. I believe they got a better receiver coming out of the backfield in Doug Martin, which I believe is underdeveloped.
Yeah, and look, if I'm John Gruden and I hear your comments, it's a little insulting. Like, you're saying, well, how were they on Monday Night Football, kind of implying that the only way that he's scouting is based off of guys that he's seen on Monday Night Football. He does have an incredible work ethic, and I'm sure he put a lot of time into evaluating these free agents. And John, even though he's been out for 10 years, he hasn't forgotten how to coach. And when he was in the league, he had a very smart offense. There was a lot of shifting and motioning, and it was multiple personnel groups. It was challenging for defenses to deal with, and you'll see a lot of that stuff too, which I'm excited to see, and I'm excited to see how Derek Carr fits into that. Now, Derek Carr's personality, how well he deals with hard coaching, that's going to be
that's what he's getting ready to get.
He's going to get that, and you can't have hurt feelings, and you can't go into a shell.
Yeah, that broadcaster John Gruden, he dead. Like, they're getting ready to have some encounters with him on a different level.
He was way friendlier on Monday night.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I understand.
A heap of more praise than those guys are about to get.
I understand all that, and I wasn't trying to be insulting, and maybe I just have very different opinions of Jordy Nelson in 2018 as a player than CeCe does, and a very different opinion of Doug Martin in 2018 as a player than John Gruden does. I look at both of these guys as guys that are descending players, as Doug Martin is a guy that had a nice year-and-a-half stretch, and I felt Tampa Bay saw that, realized he was not the player he looked like at his apex, and I think the numbers back that up. And with Jordy's had, I'm glad CeCe brought up the speed part of it, because since he's white and everyone thought he was just some crafty receiver, this guy, I watched him at Kansas State when I lived in Kansas City. This guy's been a burner from the beginning. I haven't seen that post-ACL. I haven't seen the explosion. So, listen, maybe I'm just wrong on the caliber of these football players. I mean, maybe that's it.
One thing, too, to watch. It's a very, very small thing, but as a wide receiver, it makes a big difference. Green Bay is not a field that is very friendly to wide receivers. The type of grass that grows there, the chunks that they have, it is not a speed surface. Where they're going to be playing in Los Angeles, that is a very fast surface. Where they play in the AFC West, fast surfaces. So I look for Jordy Nelson. I look for what I think's in Jordy Nelson. I expect for it to transfer to the field more so than what we saw in Green Bay. And also, that knee surgery, typically about a year-and-a-half or so, it takes you to get back to full strength.
I remember when we were in the draft room in New York, I liked Jordy Nelson. I thought he was going to be a good player. And one of our senior scouts said, you know, he's probably just going to be an average guy. And we don't want him here. And I listened to it. And you underestimate the guy, and he's
had an excellent career.
He's consistently exceeded expectations.
All right, Coach, stick around. We'll see you a little bit later. Coming up, add Kevin Durant to